In my last video upload, I talked about how to get promoted at work as a woman, and you, my listeners, demanded more. You said, what if I am being strategic? What if I'm really delivering results consistently? And what if I'm actually getting the visibility and yet still I am not being promoted? What am I missing? Okay, people, you asked for it. I am really gonna go there behind the scenes, under the hood, behind the closed doors to reveal what are some of the real dark reasons that you're not getting promoted and what to do about it. Trust me, this video will not be politically correct. Are you ready? Let's do this. This is Keisha, your career and business confidence coach, equipping you to win by owning your inherent brilliance, eliminating your shrinking tendencies so that you will dominate in your field or industry. Click on the subscribe button below as well as the bell and you will be notified of when I upload my Wednesday videos. Now, before I get into the dark reasons on why you're not being promoted, there are two categories that I'm going to talk about. The first category are things that you have control over. And the second category are things that are structural in the organization that you don't have control over. Obviously, the things you have control over, you can fix and try to move up in the organization. The things that are outside of your control are things that you cannot change. You may need to accept the fact, find a new job, and move on. So let's get into reason number one. So dark reason number one where you may not be getting promoted is because you could be dealing with bias and preferential treatment. Look, we all like to think that we are objective people that make decisions on objective facts and data. But the reality is that we all have certain implicit biases based on our economic background, our life experience, or preferences. That is just a fact. And many people in organizations that make decisions, they are of a specific economic background. They may have certain similarities with each other, and that if you do not fit those background or requirements, that you are automatically at a disadvantage. It is a fact. Now, the only true way to overcome or at least mitigate these biases if the decision makers were from different backgrounds. Like if you had 10 people in the room, they had 10 different backgrounds, 10 different life experience, and perhaps you're going to be in a better position to kind of cancel out those biases. But the reality is that that usually is not the case. So if you do not fit the similarities with these individuals, because people tend to aggregate and to prefer people that are much more like them, then you're automatically at a disadvantage. Now, I do believe that most people are inherently good. And so if you are strategic about building or bridging that gap, you can effectually overcome it. Well, maybe not overcome it completely, but you can at least deal with it. Now, I'll give you an example, but before I get into my personal example here to kind of illustrate this point, I want to make a difference between implicit bias that people are unaware of and explicit bias that is structural and systematic in an organization. Structural and systematic and explicit bias is something that you will never overcome. It doesn't make sense. You shouldn't deal with it. Update your resume, find a new job. Now that I said that, got that out of the way, I'll give you an example. I had a manager once who I realized I was at a disadvantage because I didn't go to the same school as him. I didn't have the same background as he did. We literally had nothing in common. I'm not the biggest sports fan. I don't play golf. All these things put me at a disadvantage. And I recognized that some of my coworkers that had much more in common with him was able to get things approved a lot quicker. But there was literally nothing in common. So I said, okay, I could actually sulk and for the next year and a half, you know, be miserable in this role, or I could figure out a way to mitigate this risk or overcome this bias. So I made an observation and I recognized that, hey, this guy, he loved to run. And I actually did want to get into running and lose some weight. So I said, why don't I pick up running? So I started to run half marathons. Well, I actually started, I was crazy. It's a long story, but I started with my first race going from couch potato to 10 miles. It was kind of crazy. But anyway, I started to run And I talked to him about it. He started to give me some tips. We started to share our fun experiences on going on trips and doing races, and we built a connection. And because of that, there was some sort of connection or commonality that I was able to build with this guy. And through that commonality, we were able to build a effective professional relationship, and I was able to start getting more attention and to get things approved a lot quicker than I did in the past. And honestly, when I moved on from that role, and when it was time for me to move on to another role, to get a promotion, to go to the next level in the organization, I'm happy to say that he was able to give me raving recommendations. Why? Because we were able to establish a relationship of respect and trust based on some sort of commonality. I know it's not the easiest thing to hear. Nobody likes to hear that. You just want your work to speak for itself. Why do you have to be friends with people at work? Da 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 da. The reality is that human beings are made for connection, and they connect with people that they have things in common with. So if you can make an observation, maybe you're not gonna go on the golf course with the guy, but maybe you have a teenager and that person has a teenager, and maybe you can bond over that. Maybe you could build some commonality around that. Study individuals, study people, figure out what you have in common with them, and try to overcome that personal bias by making a connection on something that may not be as obvious to other people. As I said before, this was a more simple situation that I was able to deal with. And if you're able to deal with a situation like that and overcome it, great. If not, if it's more explicit, if it's more systematic, my biggest recommendation is for you to go somewhere else and increase your opportunity of getting promoted. That being said, I made a very helpful video called When to Know When It's Time to Quit Your Job and When to Stay, because as I stated before, some of these things are things that you're going to be able to work through, and certain things I would highly recommend that you move on from. But you don't want to make an emotional decision, so click on the link on When to Quit Your Job and When to Stay and check that video out after you're done watching this video. Dark reason number 2 that you're not getting promoting at work is crying at work. According to Dutch researcher Niels van de Ven, I hope I said it right, crying changes the way a person is perceived. You could be viewed as less competent according to the research, and emotionally unstable. Even if everyone is nice, immediately they may be tolerating your crying and they may want to comfort you. That's in even a good situation. But there's a difference between wanting to comfort you and feeling like they have to protect you and being respected. When you cry at work, you have unofficially and officially immediately given your power. Besides, a lot of people are not even comfortable with crying. You completely take them outside of their comfort zone, and nobody wants to be around that. Nobody wants to feel uncomfortable. And so instead of crying, figure out whatever is triggering you and address the issue. Speak up. You may need to reschedule a meeting. You may need to walk away if you're upset, because sometimes it's not because you're sad that you're crying. Maybe people are crying because it's their way of processing an emotion. Maybe they're angry. But instead of doing all that, walk away, process the emotion, and then sit down and have a productive conversation. That way you'll be seen as competent and emotionally stable, and that they can trust you with hard things, because that is one of the drawbacks of crying at work. They're immediately gonna also begin to think that, oh, I can't trust this person with hard things, because the first thing that they do when hard things happen is that they break down. So dark reason number 3 on why you're not getting promoted is that you have very low self-awareness. Now, self-awareness is the foundational skill to have if you want to have high emotional intelligence. And a study shows people want to move up within an organization. It's not just expertise and what you do that's important. It is also emotional intelligence, how you're able to manage your own emotions and that of others, or even to be able to influence the emotion of others. It's important. We talked about crying at work, but low self-awareness is also extremely important, because the negative impact of having low self-awareness is also that you're not able to take feedback. You're not able to be coached to improve. And if you're not coachable, which is a word that managers and leaders and HR professionals use a lot, if you're not coachable, then whatever development needs you have, you're not going to be able to get the improvement and the growth and the acceleration in that area that you need, because you reject the feedback. So emotional intelligence, as with the basis of self-awareness, is extremely important. I'm going to put a link in the description below to the blog post related to this video. Dark reason number 4 is that you are just too good at your job. Okay, this sounds crazy, but stick with me for a minute. Sometimes when you're really too good at your job and the organization sees you as indispensable, they will block you. Certain managers, especially, I hate to say it, small-minded managers, will try to hold you back from moving on from that role, from being promoted out of that role, because they can't see anybody doing that job as good as you, and they feel that you are instrumental in this role to the department or to the organization's success. And because of that, they will try to stop you and block you from applying to other positions. If that is the case, then you may need to engage a sponsor to help you to get out of the role, or you may need to leave the organization and go somewhere else. But keep this in mind. Sometimes when you're just too good, your managers and your leaders may try to keep you in and try to bottleneck you in the role so that they don't lose you, because they don't want to lose that benefit to the organization. Dark reason number 5 is that you are just not a culture fit. A lot of organizations, many organizations actually, and you'll see this on YouTube videos as well as in a lot of blogs, is to figure out whether or not you are a cultural fit to an organization. And while there is some credit to that, I think we overly emphasize cultural fit to the extent that people begin to try to shape themselves, to mold inside of a culture and to fit in, instead of celebrating differences and leveraging those differences to benefit the organization. I love to say, there's a quote, I don't know who came up with it, but it says, go where you're celebrated and not tolerated. What if that very thing that makes you so different is the thing that is needed to make the organization better? I'll throw something out because it's easiest and the first thing that I can think of. What if you speak a foreign language? And the cultural fit would say that you don't have no accent, speak just like everybody else. But what if you speak a foreign language and the organization needs and wants to go into that market and get customers that speak the language that you speak, and you're the only one in the organization that speaks that language? That is what I would call a cultural advantage that you have. And that's what I think that we should focus on. Focus on what our cultural advantages are rather than trying to fit in. American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson says, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Yes, there are certain things that we need to do to be able to kind of, I don't want to say fit in, but get along, etc. But this fitting in is a little bit overly emphasized. Instead of doing that, we should celebrate our differences and leverage our differences for the advantage of the organization and for our own personal advantage as well. There is a blog post that I wrote it talks about how to use your difference as your differentiator. I'm gonna link it in the comments below, but let me know what your comments are. What do you think about this point number 5? Or did any of the other 5 points resonate with you? What are some other dark reasons that people don't get promoted that I didn't talk about? Drop it in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. As well, check out my blog that is related to this video, because I have 3 to 4 additional points that I did not address in this video. Okay, that is all for this week, just in time before the sun sets. So don't forget, you were not meant to shrink down lower, but rise up and own your power. Have a great week.